The Motorola Razr is the newest foldable phone available in the US. And this is a great phone, and I've done a lot of reviews on this and a lot of comparisons. But what I haven't done so far is compare this against a bar phone. And why am I doing this? Well, the Motorola Razr Fold is listed as the #1 at DXOMark for camera phones on foldables, where the iPhone is up on top of the list as far as a US phone. It's not #1, but it outranks the Razr Fold. So I wanted to put these two to the test and see which one takes better photos. Let's go. Now, when comparing these phones, one thing we want to remember is that Apple is now going to come out with their first foldable this year. So that's the thing to look for is the Apple camera system going to actually be better than any other foldable out there when they present their fold? The only way we'll know is by comparing it with the iPhones today. And I thought I would start with the best. So that's the iPhone Pro. If I was to compare it to the iPhone standard models or the Air, they wouldn't even compete. But now going back here, you can see on this list, the top ones, 1, 2, 3, 4, are all Chinese made or foreign made phones. Now I actually have the Vivo X300 Pro, which is #2 on this list. And if you want it sometime, I may compare that with the iPhone Pro, but that's another video. Go down the list even further. You can see there's Apple at #5. It's 5th place. And what's interesting enough is just go down a little bit further to 9. This is saying it's tied with 9. Tied 9th place with the Honor Magic 8 Pro, which I actually have right here. I have Honor Magic 8 Pro, so I could actually compare it to the Motorola Razr Fold. But that, again, will be another video. If you're interested, just let me know. But today we are going to compare this Motorola Razr Fold to the iPhone. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you side by side their ranking here. And as you can see here, as far as the DXOMarks, okay, you've got first place ranking here on the Motorola Razr Fold and 4th place on the iPhone as far as global ranking. Now, the Motorola Fold is 9th place globally, so it's, 5 places below the iPhone. But let's look at why. I mean, this is not far off on scoring. And when you look at overall camera score, I don't know how they come up with these numbers, because if you try and add some up, it just doesn't add up. But this is what they score. Photos are saying that the Motorola actually outshoots the iPhone Pro, which I'm not quite sure why. We can click here to go more, and it'll tell us why. The main camera, it looks like they're equal. The bokeh is equal, but ultra wide, which is the camera I don't really care for, is better on the Motorola, okay, by quite a bit. And then the telephoto is better on the Motorola. So we're going to get into these shots and see if this really stands true. So try to remember these things. And then when we look at videos here, 172, it says the iPhone is a whole lot better at video. So wow, that's crazy. And let's see why is it better at video. Overall video, okay, 172, 154. The main camera, 168 versus 186. That's kind of interesting. The iPhone is a 48 megapixel main shooter and a 50 megapixel on the Motorola Razr Fold. So I'm not quite sure why the iPhone is better. We'll have to see if it's more steady. Ultra wide, they gave it a tie on the two of them. And then telephoto, they say that the iPhone wins better on video. So those are some strange numbers, and I'm not quite sure how they come up with that. So we're going to look at the videos side by side and the photos, and we're going to determine ourselves if the DxOMark's got it spot on. So let's start with looking at the daytime stills. Now, I tried my best to take these photos at the same time, but with all the traffic and movement, it was kind of hard to get off the shots, but I did my best. And you can see on this one, everything's lined up pretty well, the clouds and everything, but there's a lot of clouds, so you might see a little bit of variation between them. But looking at these two, you can see that the Motorola looks a little brighter. It's capturing a little bit more with the brightness, but they both look really good. But again, this is a 48 megapixel on the iPhone versus a 50 megapixel on the Motorola. Okay, so is the DxOMark correct? Well, maybe on this photo, but not by much. And then we go to a standard zoom setting on these. In other words, on the iPhone, the first zoom is 4 times most normal phones, it's 3 times. Apple, of course, they got to do everything differently. So they went 4 times. So in this photo, it's 4 times here versus 3 times on the Motorola. And to me, it looks like the Motorola is a little bit clearer. And let's go ahead and take a closer look. We'll do just a little bit of cropping in and see if it's any clearer here. So looking here at the first telephoto shot, I think DXOMark is correct. The Motorola kills it. You know, the iPhone is looking quite blurry. You can actually see the Bloomtown here. I mean, look at it all. It's much clearer here on the Motorola. Now, why is that? Well, it's fairly simple and obvious. The iPhone cropped from its main camera. It did not use its zoom camera because the iPhone zoom lens is a 5-time zoom versus a 3-time zoom on the Motorola. And I think we're going to see some differences here shortly. So on the zoom at the 3 times versus 4 times, definitely the Motorola, simply because it's using its zoom lens versus a cropping lens here on the iPhone. Now, I don't know if you remember or not, but Samsung does the same thing with their 200 megapixel lens, although they do it too much. They crop all the way into 10 times before they switch lenses, and it looks horrible. So let's go here to the next photo. Now, this one is actually another zoom in, though, but this time the iPhone zooms in at 8. Now, this is another telephoto shot. Now, the iPhone has a preset of 8 times zoom. They say that's their high quality, same as optical zoom. So we'll see the difference here. And then over here on the Motorola, they are still using that 3 times lens to get to 6 times. So it's doubling the zoom, just like Apple is. They're going from 4 to 8, but there's a huge difference here, I think. When you look at this, I can see it already. The Motorola, you know, it's still looking clear when you zoom in, but what about the iPhone here? The iPhone is looking really clear zoomed in. Matter of fact, maybe even a little better because I don't see the pixeling that's going on the Motorola here on the iPhone. Let's go in a little bit further here and you can see, okay, they both are pixelating, but the iPhone is a bit clearer. Now, again, the reason why is the iPhone has a 5-time zoom versus a 3-time zoom on the Motorola. But in this telephoto shot, I would say that the DXOMark is off. So I don't know how they balance it. But let's go look at the next one. The next one here is 10 times on both of them. So again, we've got a 5-time zoom lens, and it's a 48 megapixel lens versus a 3 times 50 megapixel. So it should definitely be better on the iPhone. And we'll crop in here and see. I mean, it still looks really good here on the Motorola, but the iPhone, does it look any better? Not significantly. I think it might slightly give it, although I think I see a little more detail over here in the Motorola. Things start to just kind of blur out a little bit. I don't know if it's because of AI, but iPhone does use AI as well. So this will be a personal preference. I am kind of liking the Motorola because of a little bit of brightness, but the iPhone is a little more colorful. Let's go on to the next one. Now, this one is a 20-time zoom on both of them. And what do you see here without zooming in? I think they both look really clear. Is one more crisp than the other? It's hard to really say. They look really, really good. I think you're getting a little more detail in the trees and things because it's a little bit lighter. And I think the brickwork looks a little more dimensional here. It looks a little flatter here on the iPhone, but the clarity on both of them is right there. And then I went into 30 times zoom on both of them. And on 30 times, the iPhone got it here. I think it's a bit more blurry here on the Motorola for sure. You got a little more clarity. So their AI is working on this thing, I guess, and a little more color where you look a little more dull here because of the brightness and it blurred. So I don't know, maybe I moved or I would just give it to the AI. I mean, you can actually read California Street right here on the sign. You can't read it here. Now going into 40 times, that's the max the iPhone will do is 40. So I stopped at 40 and the iPhone's doing pretty good. You can still read the California here, where here you can't. And things are really starting to fade here on the Motorola. So what do you think? Let me know down in the comments. Was DxO correct that the Motorola had better telephoto? I'm not quite sure. Hey, I want to take a quick second and thank you for tuning in to the channel as we compare the Motorola Razr Fold to the iPhone 17 Pro cameras. If you got something on this video, do me a favor, smash that like button. And if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe. It's free. It costs you nothing, and it really does help out the channel. Let's get back to the video. So here we are on the night shots, and it looks like the iPhone has actually swapped here, and it's the brighter image, where the Motorola is a little bit darker, although the sky's lit up a little better. I kind of prefer that. I do like that a little bit better. But either way, I think they're both really appealing. You've got a 48 megapixel here on the iPhone, and then on the Motorola is the 50 megapixel main. Now we're going to go ahead and do the cropping in here, or actually the zoom in. You got to zoom in 3 times here on using a 3 times zoom on the Motorola, where you got 4 times, but it's cropping in on the iPhone. And you can see there, look at how everything's blown out. Everything's good, and it's blurry. And you could tell that it's just cropping in because look at this image here. Everything's blown out there. And when you go in, it's just blown out here. So there are 4 times, again, they crop in instead of actually use a zoom lens. Then we go on to the next one. You got 8 times here on the iPhone and 6 times on the Motorola, because those are the dedicated settings. And as you can see, the iPhone's doing a whole lot better this time. It's still blowing out the sign a bit, but which one compares here at night? During the daytime, the iPhone won, but let's look at this night shot just a little bit closer here. If you zoom in a little bit, you can see things look pretty good, but the blown out sign, things are blurry here. Here on the 6 time dedicated here, how are they looking on the Motorola? Well, the signage looks a little better, but you know, we are getting quite a bit of pixelating. So I think the iPhone actually blurs it out instead of pixelates it. So this would all be personal preference, but if you back off just a little bit, you could definitely see it looks to me like the Motorola looks a little cleaner. But again, that's just personal preference. Now, if we went ahead and went in 10 times, or I'm sorry, 8 times on the Motorola, that's what this one is. This is an 8 times shot. And let's go ahead and zoom in about the same as we did on the iPhone. You can see that the iPhone did much better because it's using a dedicated 5 megapixel versus a 3 megapixel zoom lens. And then this is 10 times on both of them. Again, I think the same difference. You can start to see the blurring up here on the Motorola. The iPhone's still a bit clearer, and the signage actually looks a little better. So I think the iPhone is winning on this one. And then when we go into 20 times on both of them, again, the iPhone does better. Now, 20 times is the max on the iPhone at night, and that's probably why, because they know they're not going to get any better if they zoom in more. You know, like this one's already blurred out at 20, and then you can actually go in. You can go all the way up to 100 on the Motorola. You know, now this right here is zooming in at, I think, 50. So that's still pretty clear here on the Motorola, even at 50. So that's not bad, but who needs to zoom in that far at night? So there you have it at night, you know. Yes, the Motorola does better if it uses the telephoto lens and the iPhone crops. But once the iPhone starts using that 5 times zoom lens, it's over. It beats the Motorola. So I'm not quite sure what DXOMark is saying there, unless they're judging that one time, that four times zoom versus the 3 times zoom on the Motorola. Now moving on into selfie cameras, they look pretty comparable. Matter of fact, the Motorola is actually more true to color because my shirt is green. It's not this kind of looks gray here on the iPhone, you know. So this might be personal preference. It's quite a bit brighter here on the Motorola, but I think they're both doing really good here on the selfie camera. And then this is the actual portrait here. Put them in portrait mode, and you can see there's a difference. And you can actually adjust on either one of them how much you want of the bokeh in the back. I think the iPhone was just set a little bit higher. But, you know, which one is clear? Does any of them cut off anything or part of my head? I think they're both looking good. Now, the iPhone can do one thing further, which it can take a selfie and go with a wide lens, okay, on its selfie camera, which is quite interesting. And of course, you'd accomplish this on the Motorola using the rear-facing cameras. So there's your photo test, you know, kind of interesting. I don't know that I quite agree with the DXOMark on some of these, but, you know, it's really hard to tell. But the bottom line is Motorola is doing extremely well for a foldable. Now let's take a look at videos and see if the pictures come out the same when doing video. So let's start with daytime. Now in daylight, the video on both of them are pretty comparable and pretty spot on. Now I think that the Motorola is a little bit more color accurate. It may not look like it here because it looks washed out, and the iPhone on the left is a little more colorful, but as far as the color accuracy, it's more on the Motorola. And, you know, which one is clear? Well, it almost looks like the iPhone is clear, I think. It's a little more yellow than I like, as you can see there on the sidewalk of the street, a little more yellow. But I think because of the color, it looks a little cleaner to me, you know? Yeah, it's definitely a little more cleaner. I mean, look at that fire hydrant. The fire hydrant is more detailed there on the iPhone, and then just looking over here at this little bit of a still shot, you could see that the iPhone comes in a little cleaner. Now, when you look at that building, it's interesting. The trees and stuff are a little cleaner or greener on the Motorola. So it's kind of interesting how that works. And then the iPhone, for some reason, has this problem with fireflies. I don't know if you see the lights just kind of glimmering there on the building. So it's kind of interesting. I think they're really close. So Motorola is doing really great for foldable, but I think the iPhone is still taking it on the photography, except towards the end when you see those little light flares. I'm not quite sure what's going on. I think they need some better lenses, I guess, or glass on their cameras because it adds that little sparkling. It did the same thing here at night, and you'll see that here in a bit. But first, let's look at selfie videos during the day, and you can check out the audio as well.
All right, so here's a selfie on all three, and you can see they're all pretty much the same during the daytime anyway. I can't really tell looking at these screens walking down the sidewalk, but see how they do in and out the light. See how they do with the sky, and how about the audio? How's the audio sound on these phones? Is one clearer than the other? Are they canceling out the audio sound, or are they all pretty much staying the same? Not a lot of traffic right now at the moment. Can you hear the birds chirping in the background? Some really loud birds chirping. Not quite sure if you can see that there. I'm gonna go ahead and walk out into the sunlight, see what happens. Walk into traffic. I look both ways first. So this guy wants to stop. Yeah, there we go. Get him going. See how they do here in the sunlight. And then stop and listen to the birds. See how the birds do. Maybe in the sunlight for all of them.
Well, there's a selfie comparison during the day, and the iPhone really took it because the Motorola just kind of blew things out, overexposed. But that's because it has a 1080p processing versus the iPhone does 4K. So there's a little bit of difference there. The clarity on them seemed to be pretty right on par because the iPhone is an 18 megapixel selfie camera where it's a 20 on the Motorola. But you still got to give it to Apple because they process it much better. Now let's go ahead and look at nighttime videos. Now here we are at nighttime, and it almost looks like things switch up a little bit. Things are a little brighter on the iPhone and a little darker. Now look, see there's the fireflies I talked about. Now everything's at an angle because for some reason I recorded this at an angle, so I kind of tried to straighten it out for you. But you can see the fireflies on the iPhone, but they are both actually doing a bit of jelloing. But I think the Motorola is handling the light a whole lot better, giving you an overall clearer image here at night with the video. So my preference here at night would be the Motorola. And I really can't stand those fireflies that happen a lot at night on the iPhone. So here we are, video at night, and then they both struggle with focusing on things. You can see there, especially when the light changes, it's crazy how they both struggle. Now let's jump right into the selfie night videos.
Selfie mode here at night, walking down the same sidewalk. As you can see, it's kind of dark and light out. Of course, the Motorola is really dark. Can't see it at all. It's because it's doing 1080p where the other two are doing 4K. See, it's pretty cool. A little busier down here than I thought it would be. But anyway, here's my audio test between the three of them. How am I sounding? Does one sound better than the other? What's going on here with the audio? Let's review it on the computer.
So you can see at night, kind of the same thing with the selfies. The Motorola is just abysmal because you see how dark it is. It gets dark. It can't really capture me at night on its selfie camera. And so the iPhone definitely wins, but they're both kind of pixelated and not really good at night. But honestly, I think the Motorola, it is higher pixels. I think they just need to do some fine tuning since it's a new phone. They haven't come out with an update yet, so maybe they need to fine tune that selfie camera for both daytime and nighttime because I think it should be a lot better. So there you have it, the camera battle between the Motorola Razr Fold and the iPhone Pro, iPhone 17 Pro. The iPhone definitely is still the king here when it comes to, I think, the camera features, although the Motorola is doing really well, and I think you can see probably why it was ranked #1 as far as foldables. But it definitely falls behind the iPhone on global ranking, as you saw in this demonstration. Now, when it comes to comparing the Razr Fold to the new iPhone Fold, I think the Razr's probably going to do better because the iPhone, they're going with their standard camera, not their pros. And their standard cameras or even the iPhone Air cannot compete with the Motorola cameras because they definitely don't have any zoom capability because they're not going to put a zoom camera on there. They're only going to crop. And you saw in this video how the iPhone 17 Pro did when it used a crop image. It just doesn't work. So is iPhone's foldables going to take over the market? Maybe in the passport style, but I don't think they're going to actually outperform foldables like the Motorola. Now I want to hear from you. What did you think about this comparison? Was it fair? Probably not. You got the iPhone versus the Motorola Razr Fold. I just wanted to give us kind of an idea what we might be looking for when Apple comes out with their foldables. So let me know down in the comments, what do you think? Is Apple going to have any kind of competition with the Motorola Razr Fold when they come out with their foldables? Or do you think Apple's going to just take it away? And are you excited about the iPhone Fold that's coming out, or whatever they're calling it, the iPhone Ultra? We'll talk more about that as we get closer. Now, if you got something out of this video, do me a favor, smash that like button. And if you haven't already subscribed, subscribe to the channel because there's going to be a whole lot more content on the Motorola and the iPhones coming out, and you don't want to miss that. If you want to see more comparisons with the Razr Fold, check out this video here. Until next time, have a wonderful day, and God bless.